Hey, what's going on? Charles Austin here, and let's be fit forever. So today, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about body fat. So today, we'll go ahead and define it. We'll tell you why too much is dangerous, and then we'll also give you some easy tips on how to start reducing it tomorrow, right? And we'll also go over some of those things that if you looked up body fat and how to get rid of it, you'll see some of those fake outs, some of those fake things, some of that fake news, if you will, and we'll go ahead and identify those things as well. But before we log in, or I'm sorry, before we get started, as always, let's make sure we're hitting that like button on this video, subscribe to the channel, and always turn those notifications on so you're up to date with the latest content here on the channel, right? I was a little out of breath. I was running up the stairs to get here. I said, oh no, it's 1 o'clock. I gotta get started on time. So anyway, let's dive right on in like I always like to do. Don't like to waste time. Let's get to it, right? So let's at least just go ahead and start off by defining body fat, right? And I'm sure everybody's heard of this term body fat before, okay? Reducing my body fat. What is my body fat percentage? How much fat is on my body? All these different things, right? So if we look at the basic definition right here, we're basically talking about the percentage of adipose tissue, and adipose is just another way of the scientific way of saying fat, right? The percentage of adipose tissue compared with muscle, and some of the ways we estimate it is underwater weighing. You can calculate the ratio of weight to height, or there's a little handheld device, or sometimes they have a little scale that you can step on that sends an electric current through your body to measure your fat. That's called bioelectrical impedance, right? Don't want to get too technical, right? So again, let's read this other part here. So this is basically talking about that percentage, okay? And we're trying to figure out what is our body fat percentage, right? So body fat, again, the portion of the human body that consists of fat, okay? And again, they gave you other examples of ways to measure it, okay? So that's kind of some elementary ways of just kind of talking about what body fat is. Again, you could even look up here the percentage of a person's body that is not composed of water, muscle, bone, and vital organs. So basically everything else, right? So those are just three definitions of body fat. Now let's get into some of the different types real quick, right? So as we go through here, and the first thing we want to make sure we understand is that fat is not bad. Everybody has fat. Everybody's born with fat. Everybody needs fat. Without fat, you can't do a lot of different things, and we'll go over some of those things in just a second, right? So brown fat, all right? So again, in recent studies, this is something that's kind of on the come up, if you will, right? If we're talking about brown fat, right? So scientists have found that lean people tend to have more brown fat than overweight or obese people, right? And when it's stimulated, it can burn calories. So now we're talking about that percentage and having a healthy percentage of our muscle to fat, right? We want to have a healthier muscle to fat ratio. The healthier that is, the more likely you're going to burn calories at rest, and the more lean you'll be, right? So it's known that children have more brown fat than adults. It helps keep them warm. Brown fat stores decline in adults, but they still kind of help us with warmth, right? So not going to spend a lot of time on brown fat. We'll talk about the other stuff that we are probably aware of a little bit more. But again, more information on brown fat, right? Even though leaner adults may have a little bit more brown fat than heavier people, even their brown fat cells are greatly outnumbered by white cells. So we want to move on, and that's just one type of fat, right? So let's go to the next one here, right? Much more plentiful if we're talking about white fat, right? Much more plentiful than brown. And this is where we get our energy storage from, okay? So when we are talking about being overweight or obese, right? Or if we're talking about my fat stores, or where do we store energy, this is the type of fat that we're talking about, right? So it's one of its main jobs is to store energy and also help with the production of hormones that are sent into the bloodstream. So just a second ago, we were talking about the fact that without fat, we can't do something that's very important, and that is produce hormones and secrete them into the bloodstream, right? Hormones are like signals in the body to do certain things, whether it be sleep or hunger, right? They're sex hormones, et cetera, right? as you see here, this is important. So I'm going to slow down here on this part, all right? Because this is when we start getting into chronic disease and our overall health, right? When we're talking about this white fat again. So I'm going to read this one verbatim real quick. Small fat cells produce a good guy hormone called adiponectin, I believe, right? And what this does is it makes the liver and muscles sensitive to the hormone insulin. All right, now real quick, insulin is basically a hormone secreted by the pancreas, which helps with the processing of glucose and sugar for energy. Okay, so for example, you eat an apple, right? There's a certain amount of sugar in that apple, and as that sugar gets in your body, goes through your stomach, etc., your pancreas needs to help secrete insulin to make sure that it balances out the amount of blood sugar that we have, and also help process that sugar for energy. Okay, so as we go on in this process, it makes us less susceptible for this horrible disease that is diabetes, and also the number one killer of all humans, heart disease. Okay, so again, we're talking about adiponectin, all right, a hormone which makes us sensitive to insulin. And we've already talked about the fact that insulin helps process sugar in our body, and we get to use it for energy. Now, as we read on, this is why I'm going slow, because this is so important as it relates to our overall health, right? When people become fat, right? If we're talking about becoming overweight, the fatter we become, the more body fat we have, etc., right? The production of this adiponectin, again, this hormone that we need to help keep our body sensitive to insulin. This production of this hormone slows down, and in some cases, if we have severe obesity, if you're severely overweight, it may even shut down. And what this does is now it's setting you up for disease that we just talked about here with diabetes and heart disease. So let's just review that one real quick, because I want to make sure you get it. All right. Overall, what are we saying? What we want to do is we want to make sure that we're keeping a healthy body fat to muscle ratio, right? Now, the more body fat we add, the heavier we get as humans, right? You're going to slow down the production of this hormone right here, adiponectin, right? You're going to slow it down, or it may even shut down if you're severely obese, all right? Now, when that hormone is not working properly, or you're not getting any of it at all, you're going to be more susceptible to diabetes and heart disease, because now your pancreas is not producing insulin in a healthy way that it should be. Okay, so let's keep that in mind. There are so many things associated with carrying extra weight that we don't even think about these things. Well, here's one of them, right? Now let's go to subcutaneous fat real quick. And this is the one that we normally measure when we're doing something like a skin fold measurement. If you've ever been at the gym and you've had your body fat tested, and maybe the coach, trainer, whoever, they did like a little pinch, right? And they kind of pulled some of that fat off your muscle, and they did a little pinch. Let me go ahead and show you real quick, give you a camera. So you kind of have these spots where you can kind of pull and tug fat. You know, this is the subcutaneous fat. And basically what we're doing is we're measuring it to get an estimation of how much body fat that we're actually carrying, right? Overall health, if there's a little extra fat in the thighs, maybe a little bit in your butt, okay, not the worst thing in the world. Obviously, we want to be as balanced as possible, but we're all going to carry a little more or less fat in different areas, right? But when you have fat around the belly, that's when we start having the danger zone, okay? So there's overwhelming evidence, and we continue to pile up more and more evidence that the more fat you have on your belly, all right, is kind of an indication of the amount of visceral fat that you may have, and also subcutaneous, right? And we'll do visceral in just a second. So when we're talking about having those heavy bellies, flabby bellies, when we have a lot of our fat deposited in our belly region, and we've all seen it, this is going to be more associated with poor health and increasing that risk for heart disease, right? And other illnesses associated with chronic disease, right? So let's do visceral fat real quick. All right. So this is the fat that basically wraps around our inner organs and kind of helps insulate and protect them. All right. Visceral fat also helps play a large role in insulin resistance, which boosts your risk for diabetes. Okay. So again, let's go back to this belly fat again. If we're wondering what's the connection, well, again, if we're carrying more fat around our belly region, okay, that's a big indicator that we may also have more visceral fat. Okay. Again, the bigger the belly potentially, all right, estimating that we're also going to have more visceral fat. Okay. Again, this is like the deep fat that's around our organs. You can't just get to it by tugging on your arm, right? But the problem with this is insulin resistance. Okay. Long story short on insulin resistance, it basically means that when your pancreas is producing insulin to help balance out and process blood sugar, it is either having to produce too much, all right, or it's having problems producing the right amount, right? When those things happen, we're increasing our risk for diabetes, right? So we talked about belly fat already. We talked about fat around the butt, okay? So those are some examples of of what fat is, right? We talked about why we need to make sure we keep a healthy ratio between muscle and fat, and how it influences that hormone adiponectin. And then we also talked about how it affects your production of insulin, right? All important things to keeping our risk for heart disease and diabetes as low as possible. All right. So real quick, let's compare subcutaneous and visceral real quick. Again, we kind of talked about this already, so I'm not going to introduce it all the way again. All right. So we all have subcutaneous fat. And again, this is the one that we measure when we do a body fat percent test, right? So people will typically have a greater amount of subcutaneous fat if they, and here are some of those things that come up all the time whenever I'm making a new stream, right? If we're eating more calories than we burn, you're going to have more subcutaneous fat, okay? And what does that mean? That means we're eating too much and we're not moving enough, right? Sedentary, right? Again, that means we're not moving enough. If your muscle mass is low, okay? And we'll get into it at the end here in just a few minutes when we go over some tips on how to reduce body fat. We'll come back to that, all right? Little aerobic activity, okay? If you are diabetic, again, generally, if you're a diabetic, almost always, or at least 9 times out of 10, you're carrying too much body fat as well. Okay, they almost are like, first cousins or brother and sister, whatever you want to call it, right? And also insulin resistant. Bam, didn't we just talk about that? Okay, so again, if you have issues with diabetes or insulin, creating insulin, you may be more likely to have more subcutaneous fat, right? All right, so we talked about the functions already. Storing of energy, regulating temperature, things of that nature, right? So, is subcutaneous fat bad for you? Well, again, we know that it is important to have it for a certain amount as far as, temperature regulation, et cetera, things we've already discussed. But if you have too much, look at what we're increasing our risk for. All right, all of these chronic diseases that are preventable, right? Heart disease, stroke, blood pressure, hypertension, right? Type 2 diabetes, cancer, sleep apnea, right? Kidney disease, fatty liver disease, and fatty liver disease just means we have too much fat surrounding our liver, right? Okay. So again, we'll get into, and so these are just ways to figure out how much subcutaneous fat do you have, all right? And one of the ways you do that is doing a body fat test. So we'll talk about that in just a second. Now here they're talking about body mass index, and then we're going to do a comparison on that in just a second as well, right? Visceral fat real quick. We talked about this already. Just wanted to give you a couple of more nuggets here on visceral fat. Again, this is the fat that's deeper inside our body that helps surround and insulate and protect our organs, right? So again, we talked about this. If you notice that you have extra belly fat, too much belly fat, that's a good indicator that you have too much visceral fat, okay? And again, I don't want that, all right? And again, if you have too much visceral fat, again, the same things that we just talked about. All right. You're increasing your risk for heart attack, stroke, breast cancer. Now we're talking about specific cancers, right? And here's one. I'll do a video on this at some point. Alzheimer's. Again, the common misconception on Alzheimer's is you get old, you get Alzheimer's. Alzheimer's is preventable, people. Okay? So Alzheimer's is yet another chronic disease that is preventable based on the way that we live. Okay? All right, so real quick, body fat percentage. Again, we talked about all the different types of fat. If you want to actually measure your fat, like what is body fat percentage, right? Where did it go? All right. So a body fat percentage is basically the percent of total body fat that is composed of body fat. All right. Oh, sorry. Body weight that is composed of body fat in proportion to like your lean muscle mass, your organs, tissues, and water. Okay. Again, we're basically comparing weight that is not muscle, tissue, organs, water, etc. Okay. So again, some of the ways that you can measure body fat, you could do skin fold calipers. I think a lot of gyms will have skin fold calipers. All right. But there's other ways you can do them. You can do hydrostatic weighing, very expensive. That's harder to find. There's bioelectrical impedance. A lot of gyms will have that as well. They have DEXA scans. And so a lot of these things are available at like a doctor's office or available at a gym, a fitness club, nutritionist office, etc. Places like that. Okay. So again, why does body fat percentage matter? All right. So it's an overall indicator of your physical fitness. Okay. So again, we've already talked about the fact that you want to keep a healthy ratio between your muscle and your body fat. All right. So the higher somebody's body fat percentage, the more likely they are to develop heart disease, high blood pressure, gallstones, breathing issues, sleep apnea, cancers, etc., etc., etc. All right. We can even start developing things like high cholesterol, which again can lead to blood flow issues, heart disease, erectile dysfunction, things like that. Okay. So I'm not going to get into the types of body fat. We've already done that. But what I did want to get to is a couple of things that y'all have probably heard of before, right? First of all, let's talk about what are some healthy ranges. So if you're saying, hey, I never knew about body fat, I didn't know anything about this, let me go get this measured. Well, what are some ranges that you want to be looking for, right? So as you can see, as we age, obviously these numbers change a little bit. They don't have to be as drastic as you may see in this chart because we can push some of these things off with the way that we live as we get older, right? But, you know, if you're in this 20 to 39, 40 range or so, for men, you don't really want to be much higher than about 19, 20%, right? That's kind of about your cutoff, all right? Women, your cutoff is about 32%, somewhere in there. Now, these numbers are a little bit different for athletes and conditioned marathoners and biathletes, triathletes, etc., things like that. But overall, if we're talking about general numbers, these are some ranges, all right? So as we get a little bit older, as you can see, the ranges change a little bit. As we can see here, about 33 for women, as a max, about 21. Reason why women obviously have a little bit more is because they have to bear children, all right? So that's a reason why their body fat percentage numbers are always going to be higher than men, okay? So that's just a couple of ranges to think about. So if you get yours tested, there's some of the ranges that you can remember that you want to be in. All right. Now let's do this little comparison real quick on body fat percentage versus BMI. Right. So BMI is something that I believe most of us have probably heard of at some point. What's your body mass index, right? Well, BMI is basically useless, right? If I were you, I wouldn't even concern myself with ever measuring BMI. I wouldn't worry about it. I wouldn't care about it. All right. We want to make sure we know our body fat percentage. Okay. And the reason why is, where does it say? BMI is very rough weight evaluation, right? It basically divides a person's weight by their height. So the only two things that you need in order to measure BMI is height and weight. Okay. Okay, and again, these are just another examples how to calculate body fat percentage. So again, that's not a whole lot. It doesn't factor in a lot of other things that are important with your overall health. So let's show you what we're talking about here. This is just a page where there was a body fat calculator on NASM, which is actually who I'm certified through. All right, but as you can see here, some of the things that we need in order to calculate body fat include things like your gender. And we've already discussed the fact that males and females are going to carry their weight differently. All right. Obviously, you're going to need your weight, but look at this. You're also going to need your age. As we age, we carry our weight differently. All right. Height. And in some cases, they'll ask for extra measurements. And this is just a basic calculator. But the point is, if we compare the fact that a BMI measurement is only height and weight, and body fat includes things like gender, age, height, weight, etc. All right, you're getting more information, which makes it a more reliable measure of your overall health. Body mass index is basically useless. All right, so let's go ahead and wrap this up and give you all some tips on some things that you can do to reduce your body fat. All right, but before I did, I wanted to show you something. What I did is I went to search, like reducing body fat, and look at what comes up. All right, and this is the trap. These are the traps that we got to look out for when we're trying to change our bodies, change our health. The trap here is that you say, oh, let me go ahead and look up reducing my body fat. Well, look what comes up. A pill, a powder, some kind of weird belt, another pill, something else, another belt, another pill, right? All these different things, right? So we got to look out, because all of this stuff is just gimmicks. We got to look out for all of these different things. You don't need fat burners. You don't need powders. You don't need special belts or any of that stuff, right? So let's look at some ways, and I wanted to make sure I showed you the ways we want to, throw off to the side, throw in the trash, and some of the things that we can actually start practicing, right? So 12 ways to promote long-term fat loss, right? So some of these are good, some of these are not so good, and we're going to talk about those, right? So strength training, absolutely, all right? Definitely, if you're somebody who doesn't do strength training, start doing it. Okay, helps build your body. Helps build your the muscle on your body, which helps reduce your body fat. So definitely start strength training. We don't necessarily need a high protein diet, folks. All right, high protein diets are associated with a number of health issues, including issues with your kidneys, increased risk for stones, kidney stones, and things like that. So increasing the acidity in our body. We don't need a high protein diet. We just need to have the protein that our body needs, right? So look out for that. Getting more sleep, absolutely, right? Eating more healthy fats, absolutely. We're talking about our unsaturated fats, right? Our omega-3, 6, and 9s, right? So if we're eating things like flax seeds, if we're eating avocados, we're eating nuts and seeds and things like that, excellent idea, right? Absolutely. We want to just drink water, y'all. All right. The occasional cranberry juice, apple juice, orange juice, no big deal, as long as it's 100%. But stay away from the sugary beverages. Fill up on fiber. Absolutely. The more fiber, the better, y'all. Okay. So please, we've talked about fiber more than once on some of my other videos. So definitely want to make sure that we're loading up on fiber. Helps flush out your body's system of fat and all that, all the waste. We want to definitely do that. Whole grains, absolutely. All right, choose whole grains instead of refined carbs. Increase your cardio, absolutely. Walk, jog, bike, swim, all these different things. I don't really care about that one, unless you want to drink coffee, right? HIIT training, absolutely. The good thing about HIIT training is it burns more total calories than just about anything, all right? So you're going to be burning all types of calories, and your total calorie burn will be super high, all right? Probiotics, you can do that. That's something you can do to help with your overall digestion. I would not recommend intermittent fasting at all, all right? Again, we would just focus on consuming regular, natural, healthy, whole foods on a regular basis. It doesn't matter how we eat them, y'all. It's about what we eat. Okay, it's about what we eat. It's not about how we eat. This is another gimmick. Intermittent fasting. All right, all these different fasts and all that stuff. All right. Last little bit before we wrap up. Again, another list here. We talked about good fats. There were a couple of things on here that I wanted to mention. Again, we don't have to pump up the protein. Just make sure your protein is plant protein. Okay. Fiber, absolutely. Strength training, absolutely. Cardio. Here's one. So your non-exercise activity thermogenesis, right? Long story short, we're talking about things that keep you moving more. Okay. So some of these examples include getting up and cooking, right? Vacuuming, taking out the trash, anything that you can do that's going to make you move more and create more body heat is going to help you burn fat. You'll be surprised how this can help you in the long run if you're just starting out. Obviously, sleep more, and then also this is a big one, y'all. And I want to end on this one, and we'll wrap it up. But please take your time to eat. Okay, so as it says here, it takes about 20 minutes for your stomach to even tell your brain that you have food in your stomach. So what that means is if you take something to eat, chew it up, good, by you swallow it, it's going to be 10, 15, 20, 25 minutes, depending on the person, depending on the food, right? Before your brain even kind of realizes that, hey, we have food here. So what happens a lot of times when we eat too fast, we don't give our brains time to catch up with our stomach. So then what does that make us do? Make us eat more. So if you actually take the time to chew and enjoy your food, it'll make you eat less, which is another way for us to reduce our body fat. Okay. Let's see if we got any Q&A today. I am done on body fat. Let's see here. Yes, yet another text message. I've been trying to reduce my body fat. Hold up. Oh, I lost it. Hold up. I lost it. I've been trying to reduce my body fat, but have had issues. Oh, got to spell check. Issues. Yeah. Oh, it was 2 messages. I'm sorry. I've been trying to reduce my body fat, but I've had issues with reducing the fat around my belly. Yeah. What should I be doing? Yeah. So again, if we're specifically, so this is a good question, right? Actually, I think this is a question I think everybody can benefit from. So again, the question was, I've been having issues reducing body fat around the belly. Like, why am I struggling? What should I be doing? Right. So the first thing we got to make sure that we understand is that we can't pick a spot on our body that we want to reduce fat. We can't say, oh, I want it to get fat out of this spot, or I can't grab my tummy and say, I want to get fat away from this area. That's not how it works. So the first thing is to understand we can't pick a spot on our body and say, let's reduce that. What we have to do is we have to practice reducing body fat over the entire body. Now, your body's pretty smart. All right. That's the cool thing about it. And lots of cases, when you have body fat more deposited in other areas, yeah, it may start to go a little bit more in that area. Okay. But as far as what specific things we can do, obviously the basic stuff we've already talked about, your strength training. If you're not doing strength training, a lot of people will focus on just getting out and taking a walk or a jog, a bike ride, or whatever, swim, but they'll never pick up a weight. Okay. So if you're not strength training, you have to start, right? 2-3 times a week, in addition to what you're doing with your walking or jogging or whatever. All right. Walking and jogging is totally healthy. I do it all the time. All right. But you also have to pick up weight. So if you're not strength training, definitely do that. Or sometimes people focus on strength training too much and they don't do the other stuff. Make sure you're balanced. Also, fiber is super important. Okay. Fiber is going to help remove waste and extra fat and cholesterol from our body. So the more fiber we can have, the better. Plenty of plant sources. Eat plant sources. You'll get all the fiber you need. And then also, you're going to want to eliminate dairy products. So if you're still consuming dairy products, definitely get rid of those, because all they do is spike your blood sugar, make you store fat, et cetera, make your body grow. It makes your body want to grow because it's designed to make baby cows grow. So stay away from dairy. So those would be 3 things, or was that 4? I would say definitely strength train. If you're not doing strength training, keep your cardio and your strength training balanced. Fiber. Get away from dairy. And if you do those things regularly, you'll see that body fat around the belly will start to shrink. But hey, I'm gonna go ahead and wrap that up today. Again, make sure you're liking this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn those notifications on. We'll be here every Monday and Wednesday at 6 p.m. Central Time, every Saturday at 1 p.m. Central Time. And Also, follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Fitness Charles. And I will see y'all on Monday at 6 p.m. Central Time.